Hi guys and gals, how y'all doing? Good, good. I can't see you, I'm blinded by the light, so it's going to be hard to wake any of you up that are sleeping. I don't be able to see you sleeping. What is 407? Is that a class? Yeah? Cool. Got it. Secret code. Right. Well, thanks for having me, Tom, and the University of Michigan. It's an honor to be here. It's fun for me to be part of this series of speakers coming in on Friday. I'm a street dude, as I was telling Tom earlier. When I came up and we were chatting, I didn't have the opportunity, that's the wrong way to put it. I did not take advantage of the opportunity to go to college like you guys. So I went and I sailed the world and did a bunch of goofy stuff and then scalped tickets on the streets down at SEC and NASCAR and whatnot. Just kind of learned the ropes of business, the hard knock way, if you will. And I thought Tom and I will, when we sit down to chat, we'll shed a little more light on that. But fortunately, I was brought on to lead the strategic direction and community engagement, really, for Shinola back in 2011 when we started this venture. And what we're doing in Detroit is what we've done is we've built a watch factory in Detroit, and you know, we often find ourselves asking the team and whatnot, why did we build a watch factory in Detroit? Why build a watch factory in Detroit? Why not accept that manufacturing is gone from this country? And why not let the rust and weeds finish what they started? Why not just embrace the era of disposability? And more importantly, why didn't we buy a warmer coat before we moved here? For 3 Detroit winters, we've asked ourselves these questions and worked not to find our answers, but really to build them. And so at Shinola, we're building a modern and quintessentially American brand through the reintroduction of domestic manufacturing at a scale, and I'll come back to that scale in just a second, that can shape culture, create community, and deliver goods of the highest quality that are built to last. And I mentioned the scale. Shinola is a business that's for profit. A lot of people look at us and, you know, we tell our story and whatnot, and they think about us as a philanthropic endeavor, an endeavor that might not be profitable or one that doesn't care about profitability. We care very much about profitability because what we're doing in Detroit is we're creating jobs. And to continue creating jobs, we have to create profitability and bring in that revenue to be able to build a sustainable business and continue creating jobs. And that skill is important. And I talked about all those little points there. We have the ability to make 500,000 watches annually in Detroit in the current configuration of our factory. We're bucking the system. We're bucking the watch industry. That system over in Switzerland that's always been this nice, tidy, neat industry, and we've brought watchmaking back to our country. Watchmaking left the United States from a large-scale point of view about 40 years ago, and has been an industry that's primarily been based in Switzerland, the Far East, being China and Taiwan. And then in Japan as well, they make digital timepieces. I'm going to run you through this video quick. This is our brand video. Let's see if I can get this thing to play, or it's going to play at the stage here.
The question isn't why you built a watch factory in Detroit. It's why you built one anywhere else. This is the city that made this country, with its steel, with its skill, with its labor. It's why we're here, reestablishing trades that haven't been seen in this country in a generation or more, creating goods that will last a lifetime, if not longer, knocking rust off the American supply chain with every chance we get, crafting our leather goods next door to where we build watches, hand-painting our watch dials just down the street. All in a city that's shown over and over again that the hard things get done when the stakes are higher. It's a tall order to return to full, but it's what hundreds of Shinola employees work towards every day here in Detroit, where we believe in the beauty of industry, the glory of manufacturing. In a city where we know there's not just history, there is a future, where we are working to create a community that thrives through excellence of craft and pride of work, reclaiming the making of things that are made well. Shinola, where American is made.
Just to give you guys a sense of how we've scaled, when we started in 2011, there were 3 of us, and today, 4 short years later, not even 4 years, but just over 3 years actually, later, we're at 370 people. The lion's share of those people are in Detroit, and I just saw a bunch of them there standing in front of our flagship store in Midtown Detroit. Can you click? Let's see here. Yeah, just click down one more time. I don't know who I'm talking to, but it's happening, so it's kind of cool. So I'm not going to read this blurb to you guys, but you can all read it while I'm chatting, you know, and what we do is we celebrate the beauty of manufacturing and the investment in the American workforce. And we've done that by creating relationships. And that blurb that's underneath of that tagline there really talks about those relationships, or mentions 2 of the main relationships that we've created and been able to leverage to bring this thing to life in Detroit. The first relationship is a relationship with a Swiss watchmaker. Right. We in Detroit and we as marketers that started this company knew absolutely nothing about making a high-quality timepiece. The people in Detroit knew nothing about assembling a high-quality timepiece or a movement, the engine that makes the watch tick in Detroit. So we had to train them. And so we had relationships from previous businesses and previous lives. And we were able to go to Switzerland and convince a Swiss guy to come to Detroit and build a watch factory, a state-of-the-art watch factory, and then train people to assemble the watches. The second relationship that's mentioned there is a relationship with our landlord. And our landlord is the College of Creative Studies, where Shinola lives in the 65,000 square foot space on the 5th floor of the college. Is an incredible space. It's a space that's built out for collaboration. It's a space that's built out for students to come down and see things being made. It's a space in which we work, we live, we thrive, we play together, we laugh, we cry, we fight, all of those things. But it's the only kind of relationship between a college and a business like Shinola that we know of in the world, and so it's very exciting. And I talk about relationships, and you know, you guys and gals being entrepreneurs or fledgling entrepreneurs or whatever you are in the cycle of your you know, life. Remember relationships, and remember relationships that start right here. The guy or the gal that you're sitting next to, or with Tom. Those relationships are relationships you might need to go back to in 10, 15, 20, even 30 years from now to do something crazy like we're doing in Detroit. It started with very solid relationships that were built on a foundation that allowed us to go back to these guys. The Swiss guys have been able to teach us how to make a watch that we have put a lifetime guarantee on. Just to give you a sense of how into it they are, they've brought over their A-team to Detroit and taught us how to do this in Detroit. So what they've taught us is how to assemble the movement, and that's an exploded view of a movement. So many people ask us why we're in Detroit, right? Well, guess what? We're in Detroit because we're making engines. That's an engine. That's an engine, sorry. And where else would you go in the United States if you were looking to make an engine? You'd probably go to the Motor City, right? And so we found ourselves in the Motor City, digging around, looking for space, looking for a place to put this concept and to house Shinola. And in looking, we stumbled into the College of Creative Studies that gave us a tour. The elevator happened to stop on the 5th floor, and boom, it opened up, and it became very evident that that was going to be our home. We went to the college president, Rick Rogers, and asked him if we could do it. He looked at us like we were absolutely crazy and told us to get out of his office, and we did. But we kept knocking on the door and eventually convinced him to allow us to be in the building. And the name of the building is the Argonaut Building. And we always try to name things with Shinola and not just give something a name like an MKC. And I'm not going to mention what brand that's associated with, but what does MKC mean, right? As you're thinking and building about your brand, your products, I would recommend that you always think about creating names and whatnot that have relationship back to something that's around the brand. So we named the movement of our watch, the engine that powers it, the Argonite movement. So on all of the watch dials you see Argonite and then a number, a hyphen and then a number, and that number is the caliber of the movement that comes from Switzerland, and we then assemble here in Detroit. This video here is going to show you guys a little bit more in depth into the assembly of movements and watchmaking, how we train people in Detroit. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
To make a watch in the United States is an unbelievable endeavor. Watches are the most complex product to make in regards to design, development, and manufacturing.
We want to make watches in Detroit. We will assemble the movements here. All the D-line employees that we hired, they've never assembled a watch. They've assembled cars maybe, but not watches.
People gonna buy watches that we made. It's gonna be a big deal to me.
Even though it is the beginning, you just want to put your best foot forward and try your best.
Ronda and Shinola have partnered to bring the knowledge of movement manufacturing to the United States, supporting Shinola in bringing high-quality watches to the market.
When they were training in the beginning, they would just go around the neck of the trainee and show with their own hands how to handle the parts.
They have this long checklist of, showing us like how actually this stuff works so we can troubleshoot it ourselves.
It's getting the best people that know what they're doing and bringing them all together to create something that's really unique in the United States.
All the components are produced in Switzerland. All we need is a proper assembly of the components. It's like on a car. A good car is only a good car if everything is good quality and assembled the right way. We can bring the knowledge, but the people are still the most important element. By the training they had from our crew, there is no reason why this quality that we have already achieved can be transferred to Detroit.
Everybody's pretty good. I commend everybody. We're coming together every day. It's just like a team.
These people that are working in the factories and are building watches, that's really the story. This is about the United States, and it's localizing jobs and building jobs not just in Detroit but all across the country. This space was a big raw open concrete space, and now it's a watch factory.
Click on to the next slide. There we go. So we'll just get into the product a little bit and talk about watches, but what you're looking into here and what you just saw in the film was, or is, our state-of-the-art watch assembly and movement assembly facility. It's the only one of its kind in the United States. And just to touch briefly on Detroit, it's incredible if you think about what's happening in Detroit and the perception of what's happening in Detroit and what has happened in Detroit. And you all, as young entrepreneurs and folks that are going to be going out into the world and changing how we live, potentially, how we think, et cetera, think about Detroit. think about the opportunity that's there. And I think Shinola speaks to that. And is something for you guys and gals as you all adventure out there into the Wild West, you know, is Detroit an opportunity for you? Or even this region, you know? Stick around here is, I guess, what I'm getting at. There's a lot to do, and, you know, starting up a watch factory in Detroit, just to give you a sense, did not take two guys sitting on the opposite sides of a big boardroom table. It took one wild, drunk Indian to do this. It's a very, very high-risk investment. And as you guys and gals also move into looking at ideas and trying to decide what you're going to do, I would encourage you to take shots, take risks, don't be scared, and especially don't be scared to fail. This guy right here is Stefan. Stefan's one of our master watchmakers, and when we started Shinola, he heard about what we were doing. He was actually working in the automobile industry, and he had his little side business making and repairing watches for people in town. And he heard what we were doing and came and did the interview and stepped up to the plate and took a shot and put some faith into Shinola, and is today still with us and has been there ever since the beginning, and is an incredible human being. Just to give you a sense of scale of the parts and pieces that we work with, the assemblers work with in the middle of the tray there, those are screws. You can't really see them with the naked eye at this distance, but it's a very intensive job in terms of, intense job in terms of your visual aptitude. It's very laborious from that point of view. All of our products are QC'd on the incoming side of things and on the outgoing side of things. It's extremely important that all of our products that leave the facility after being assembled here are quality controlled. And that has led to us having a sub 1% return on all of our watches. And just to give you a sense, in total numbers, we've sold just over 180,000 watches to date, and that's right at 2 years actually that we've been selling watches. This is run well. This is our first model that we launched with this watch. Very interestingly, when we started, our model was a little bit different than what it is today. Our model when we started was we were going to start a watch factory and we were going to sell watches to third parties, so like a Modavo Group or a Fossil Group. Those guys would be able to come to us and buy watches, and we would slap their logo on the watches and then distribute them for them out to their warehouses and distribution centers. What we did is we needed to show the world that we could make a high-quality watch in Detroit, and so we launched the business March 13th of 2013, actually March 14th it was of 2013, just 2 years ago. And we launched online this watch. It was actually a different model, but the Runwell was our core model. And we launched with 2,500 of them. We thought we'd put them online and they'd sell out over the course of a few months, and we would be able to show the world and tell the world what we were doing, and that we could make a high-quality timepiece in Detroit. We took out ads in 4 major newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, USA Today, and the Detroit Free Press on the 14th of March 2013, and the watches sold out. We made 2,500 of them. They sold out in 8 days. And at that point, our model completely shifted, and we realized that we would only be making watches for Shinola, and that's how we are operating today. This is the brakeman, just running you through some of the product. This is the bridle. This is the birdie. And then our fourth platform, I'll show you guys in just a second, is an interesting one. It kind of shows you a little bit of the fact that at Shinola, we don't take ourselves too seriously, right? We like to think that business can be fun, and we like to have fun. And so we were headed to Basel, and Basel's our, Detroit Auto Show, but it's the big watch fair over in Switzerland. And the boss came to us one day, and he said we couldn't find a name for his last watch, this second ladies' watch we had as our fourth platform, and we were coming up with one stupid name after another, and none of them made sense. And so Tom said to me, he said, Jacques, if you guys don't have a name by the time we get to Basel, we're naming this watch after the first person that walks into our booth. So here's the Gamelski. Victoria Gamelski was the first person to walk into our booth, and she now has a Shinola watch named after her, and she's actually very, very proud of that. It's quite funny. Just to touch a little bit, guys, on people. People are everything to us. Shinola is not about me. It's not about a single person. It's about all of our people. And the human stories that are at Shinola are absolutely incredible. Now, I'll just tell you a couple of them, but on the left there, that's Willie. Willie Holly's his name, and he was a security guard in the building when we started. He heard what we were doing. He came up, took our tour, our visual test and aptitude test, and passed both of them. He never made a watch. He never assembled a movement, really didn't know that a movement was needed to make a watch tick. And today, Willie leads 40 people on the assembly side of things in the business. And then on the right there, that's Crystal. She's an even more incredible story, I would argue. Crystal was our nighttime janitor. She would come in at about 7 p.m. when we'd all go home, and she'd clean the facility all through the night. And then we'd get in every morning and everything would be clean and we'd go back to work. Well, Crystal had enough of being the nighttime janitor at one point. She came to us and she said, hey, I want to make watches. And we said, all right, you got to pass the test. You got to go through the process that everyone else has to go through to become a watchmaker. And she did that. She passed with flying colors. And today, Crystal leads a team of 12 people on our QC side of the operation. Very, very incredible, very poignant stories there. Crystal had the opportunity to actually hand President Clinton his watch when he came to Shinola last year, which was absolutely incredible to watch. In terms of manufacturing, so much has left our shores, and all we can do to make things here in the United States is invest and innovate. And so last year, we're working through our numbers. We went to our strap manufacturer down in Largo, Florida. We told them how many watch straps we would need this year, and they wet their pants. They didn't have the capacity. They thought they were going to lose us as a client, and we would take the operation offshore. Instead of doing that, we made an investment into the most sophisticated, we started the most sophisticated leather strap manufacturing operation in the world today, in Detroit. And it lives on the 5th floor of the college. We've hired craftsmen and women from the city and trained them on sewing and stitching and assembling, cutting, stamping, and all the different process that go into making a strap in the college. And today, we're making about 500 straps per day in the facility. It's very exciting and allows us to ensure that all of our watch heads will actually come with a strap. Bicycles. People oftentimes ask us, why the hell did you guys make a bicycle? Where do watches and bicycles fit together? And it's quite simple. We can make bicycles in America. The bicycle industry did leave our shores but we are in the process of bringing it back, and we've been fortunate enough to work with the best bicycle team in the world. The lady on the left there, her name is Sky Yeager. You go to a bike show with Sky Yeager, it's like going to the World Series with Babe Ruth. She is the most prolific, well-known female bicycle designer of our times. And I called her when we were starting this business, and I said, Sky, I want to start a bicycle business in Detroit. She hung the phone up the first time I called her. And she said, before she hung it up, she said, don't call me again. And I called her again, and the second time she listened to me and she said, all right, I'll come on board and consult with you guys for 2 weeks and help get you off the launch pad. And she came on for 2 weeks, and at the end of the 2 weeks, she called me and she said, Jacques, I need a full-time job with you guys. What you're doing is incredible, and I want to be a part of it. And so Sky's been with us now for over 2 years, and she continues to lead the charge on bicycle design. Then the guy on the right there is Richard Schwinn. I don't know, you guys might be too young to remember the brand Schwinn bicycles or not. Some of you may know it, but Richard's fourth generation Schwinn, and he lost that brand. His family lost that brand because they refused to go offshore back in the 90s, and they could no longer compete with all the other brands from a cost perspective when the bicycle industry went offshore. And so Richard was smart enough to buy back one of the family's operations in Waterford, Wisconsin. And so he's been making bikes in Waterford, Wisconsin for a guy like Tom who wants a custom bike to ride 40 miles a day, and you know, he wants it to be this color and this size, and he wants to ride trails, whatever it may be, and Richard will build a custom frame. But Richard could only build 100 of those custom frames annually. And so what we did is we went to him and we said, hey Richard, we want to make bicycles in America, and we want to make a significant amount of them, not a ton. We wanted to make 1,000. And we said, so we want to make 1,000 bikes. You can make the frames and the forks for us here in Waterford at the highest level of quality possible. What do you need us to do? And he said, well, you guys got to give me a PO and reassure me that I'm going to have revenue coming in from this because I need to go hire people, right? And at the end of the day, that's what we're up to at Shinola, is we're creating jobs. And so Richard went out and hired 5 new welders and a couple other engineers on his team to be able to make 1,000 bicycles for Shinola, and he continues to make bicycles for us there in Waterford, Wisconsin. Bikes and watches are also similar if you look at the urban environment. You know, today, people ride bikes kind of like you roll up in your old VW Bug to the coffee shop. Well, you might roll up on your Shinola bicycle, and it's part of your ethos. It's like a watch, you know? It's part of who you are. It's part of your outfit. And so bicycles and watches have that similarity. The supply chain is very similar as well. We don't make all of these watch components here in the United States. We assemble them all, but we can't source them all here in the United States. And the bicycle industry is very similar. So we source bicycle parts from Taiwan, where the industry actually is based today in terms of manufacturing. And we bring all those parts and pieces into Detroit, and we assemble bikes, in this case in the store on Cass and Canfield, at Cass and Canfield this is the Runwell. This is our flagship model. It's a $3,000 bicycle. Our bikes aren't cheap. But we're working, and we're actually just launching in the coming weeks a bicycle that will retail for $1,000 US. It's called the EHour. You'll all be seeing that around campus, I hope, because we're opening a store here in Ann Arbor on Main Street as well. This is the Bixby. This is our 3-speed version. The bicycle retails for $2,000 US. They're incredible machines, hand welded, hand built in Detroit, and then welded in Waterford, Wisconsin. And this is the ladies' Bixby. We get into leather. This is another category, another product category we're able to manufacture here in the United States. And in fact, we're able to manufacture all of our leather products 100% here in the US, from sourcing the leather all the way to the finished product. This is a factory. It's kind of interesting, this story. This factory is in St. Genevieve, Missouri, outside of St. Louis. When we went to them, we heard about their capabilities and sewing knowledge they had there. We went to them, and there were 6 ladies in that far right-hand corner back there tucked away, and the company was dying. They were making checkbook covers. I don't know if any of you have ever written a check or own a checkbook cover, but there's not a big demand for checkbook covers in the world today. And so we went to them and worked with them to get them to a place where they could sew and make leather goods for Shinola, and today the business is thriving. We don't toot our horn about that. It's just a side story to tell you that if you look at innovating and you look at building things here in the United States, there are people that know how to do it. You just have to train them on new methods and new thinking and inspire them in a way in which they will get behind a crazy idea like Shinola and making bags and wallets and tech accessories for us. Some of our products, just to run you through. Quickly, the Runwell backpack. That's Skip Horween on the left there, and one of the ladies who sews in St. Genevieve, Missouri. Skip is, he's the owner. He's 4th generation family owner of Horween Leather in Chicago. And so that's where we source all of our raw material in from the hides from Skip and his son Nick in Chicago. And all that comes into Detroit, and then we cut and assemble and whatnot from Detroit or St. Genevieve, Missouri. And we also make leather goods in New York today. Our paper products are actually made right here in Ann Arbor, believe it or not. And this is another incredible story in terms of innovation and forward thinking on a manufacturer's behalf. We went to this guy here, Mallory Edwards Brothers, and they're a book bindery company. So they were binding books for, students. They were binding books for churches, whatever it may be. With everything that's happening in technology, their building, their business was on a downward slope. And we went to them and asked if they could make a journal book that would compete with Moleskine. I don't know if you all know Moleskine, but Moleskine will hopefully slowly but surely become less and less recognized here in the United States, because we are going to begin dislodging them from the front of those Barnes & Noble bookstores on college campuses, and it's already begun. Our books are made of 100% American-made products. They're Smythe sewn. The paper comes from sustainable forests. It's all acid-free. And it's at the same exact price point of the European paper that you're buying from Moleskine. But that European paper is actually being made in the Far East. Like so many brands today, they're pulling the wool over the consumer's eyes, right? And I'll talk more about this in a minute when we get to a couple of different slides, but it goes back to being transparent with the consumer. And we're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can with the consumer, i.e. me telling you guys that this watch is not made in America. This watch is built in Detroit of parts that are sourced in from all over the globe. But that is 100% made in America, and it's the exact same price point as a product that's being made in China. Some of the equipment that they're using, a couple of the guys that work there, just to get into our retail, today we have 7 stores. Growth has been pretty explosive over the past couple of years, and so we've opened several stores from London all the way out to the West Coast. And Silver Lake, this is our flagship store in Detroit. The store is a freak. I don't know if any of you know about retail, but when we opened this store, we were budgeting for a retail store to be in the heart of Detroit, Midtown Detroit. And where this was where you used to go and get your drugs. And all the bad activity that was happening in Detroit was sort of centered around where we opened the store. That's kind of how some people call it stupid or crazy where we are, but we did it. And so we were budgeting for the store, and at the same time we were opening our store in Tribeca over in New York. And when we opened the store, when we were budgeting for that store in New York, we looked at the numbers and what we thought the footfall would be and whatnot, and we came up with a number for the New York store. And so we figured that the Detroit store would be a small percentage in terms of revenue of the New York store. And that number ended up being 180,000 US dollars from June 27th of 13 to the end of the year. This store ended up doing $180,000 in the first 2 days of being opened and finished that first year at $3.5 million of revenue. Last year, the store did $9.5 million, and this year, it's tracking to do over that. A lot of bets on that table. In that store, we do our bicycle assembly, and then we're also beginning to manufacture dials. So the faces of our watches are being made in that store as well. Slowly but surely, we're proving up that we can make dials in the United States. One more component that we'll be able to do here, this is our store in Tribeca. Incredible space. All of our stores, guys, are experiences. So you go into this store and you can get a pastry or a coffee from The Smile. I don't know if any of you all are from New York, but The Smile's a restaurant in New York. It's pretty well known. And so we partnered with Carlos and Matt from The Smile, and they built a coffee shop in front. So you come in and have a coffee and then go check out what's going on in Shinola, or not just get out of the space. Our store in Minneapolis. And then just to talk, about direct a little bit more the watch industry. If you look at the luxury watch industry, they don't typically sell watches online. And so again, going back to what I said in the beginning, we're bucking the system. We're selling watches online, and about 25% of our revenue is generated from our .com. It's an interesting platform to sell a watch from, because people like to try on watches. They like to feel the watch. They like to experience the watch. But what we've done, and what we did way early on, was we threw up a website before we had assembled anything, before we even knew we could assemble anything in Detroit, right? And we started telling a story. And we believe today the consumer wants story. There's so many damn widgets in the world that have no meaning to them, from our phones to this clicker to whatever it may be. We have enough widgets, right? And the consumer today wants something that they can relate to, something they know where it comes from, They know who built it, etc. It's kind of like our food, right? You go to Whole Foods and you buy a dozen eggs. I don't know when you guys have bought a dozen eggs, but I buy a dozen eggs quite often because I have a couple of voracious teenagers at home. And the eggs come with a story. And the story tells me about the farmer that raised the little chicken, and the chicken lays the egg in her coop every day. And I love that. And I know where it comes from, and I know who produced that egg. And I believe that that trend is happening with consumer-facing products. So at Shinola.com, you go to the site, not only do you get the products, but you also get the story, you get the experience. You get to engage with the brand in a very deep and rich way. And this platform has proven to be incredible for us as a business because of the margins. You can imagine if we're selling a watch at Neiman's or Nordstrom's or in a jewelry store that we don't own, our margin is not going to be, our profit margin is not going to be what it is when we're selling it direct through our .com. Something to think about as you guys start up your businesses. Marketing. Again, this is where we don't take ourselves too serious. We have a lot of fun. This was the first ad that we launched with. This is the ad that sold out our first 2,500 watches in 8 days. It was incredible. That was an investment of about $400,000, just over $400,000, and that was the watch that we sold. The craziest part is we hadn't assembled one of those watches. We had made movements, but we had not made a watch yet. And the people bought them. And people gave us, going back to that brand website that we put up at first, people had built a trust with the brand. People had built a trust with us because we were out in the community, engaging people and building that groundswell in a very grassroots way, in a way that people knew they could come knock on my door, literally, where I live in Detroit, if I didn't deliver what I said I was going to deliver. And we delivered 3 months later. But people gave us $550 times 200, or times 2,500 to hold on to until we delivered their watches 3 months later. Someday we believe they'll call Geneva the Detroit of Switzerland. I am terror path right now to open a Shinola flagship store in Geneva. I'll be there actually next week, and we're going to bring a little bit of love and really shake up those Swiss boys. I don't know if there's any Swiss people in the audience, or I hope I don't offend you. But we're coming for you. Guaranteed to be regifted, but not for 60 years or so. We did a campaign with Bruce Weber. I don't know if you all know who Bruce Weber is, arguably one of the greatest American photographers of our times. You guys have seen photographs that he has taken from Ralph Lauren to Abercrombie & Fitch, all those guys that have the six packs and the beautiful chests, and they're all beautiful, and that's Bruce Weber. But for us, we didn't want that. We didn't want the models. We used people in Detroit, everyday common people off the street. Literally, they were preparing for the shoot and found one of the models walking down the sidewalk and grabbed him. And he was part of the shoot, which was pretty incredible. That's Natasha on the left. She now works for us. And the lady on the right there, she's an educator, old school educator. And you'll hear from Natasha here in a few minutes. Guys, just kind of in wrapping up, you know, we can see here at Shinola, we're thinking big, and we need you guys, as you all walk away from this experience, this 4-year experience, or some of you sleeping up there might have a 6-year experience there, but Whatever that experience is, I encourage all of you to walk away from this experience thinking big, right? Don't think about little things. Worry about the little things later. Think about the big things today. What's going to make an impact on your community? What's going to make an impact on your state? What's going to make an impact on this country? And what's going to make an impact on the world, right? Think big. Go for it. Don't be scared. You're going to fall on your face 1,000 times. Believe me, I have. In the worst way possible. And Tom might ask me a question in a little while, and I might have to give you a number of how much money I've lost in my career. Investors' money. And it's okay. I'm still working for that investor, right? Just to give you a sense, think big and go big. I always say go big or go home. You guys have probably heard that. Be transparent and honest. I talked about this briefly during the presentation. Guys, you have got to be honest. You've got to be transparent. And you've got to be real. I hate using this word. It's authentic. But authenticity today speaks to the consumer, and they want to know everything about everything, right? So don't try to pull the wool over their eyes like the Swiss guys do. Again, and I'm sorry if you're Swiss out there, the Swiss guys tell you that their watch is Swiss made, and they all say Swiss made on the dial, but guess what? I've been to the factories in China and seen it with my own eyes. The watch components for a lot of Swiss brands, even the high-end Breitlings, Omegas, those guys, those watch components are being made in the Far East. The Swiss government allows them to write Swiss made on it because 3 points of criteria that they established many years ago. 60% of the cost of the watch, the makeup of the watch, has to come from Switzerland. The movement has to be a Swiss movement, and it has to be assembled in Switzerland, right? Well, 60% is that movement. 60% of the cost is the movement cost. And the rest, they source in and they assemble it in Switzerland, and boom, they throw it out there to the consumer, and they have Brad Pitt doing this number with it, or Anna Kournikova doing this, and she's hitting a tennis ball, whatever it may be. And the consumer's like, all right, great, I can get a Swiss-made watch. That's not the truth, right? And eventually, that type of stuff is going to surface. Those kind of false marketing tactics, we believe, are eventually going to come back and bite those brands in the butt. Whatever you do, do it well. I can't say this enough. Quality matters. Quality, quality, quality. You've got to do things well today. Whether you're building an app, a piece of technology, or you're selling flowers, or you're making watches, you've got to do it well, and you've got to do it right. Don't skimp. Don't try to shave off an extra dollar of your raw cost because it's going to throw an extra couple $1,000,000 to the bottom line, but it's compromising the quality of your product. At the end of the day, what does that impact? That impacts your brand. And your brand is what you have, right? You want your brand to be able to stand up on its own, even if you take that product away, that high quality product. Well, you want that brand to be able to stand there on its own and represent what your mission is and what you stand for. That product, if you throw out a crappy product, again, the consumer is going to take you apart. And you all know it best. They'll take you apart in the digital space. It's not pretty. I think this is the last slide. I don't know. I'm putting a lot of you to sleep at this point, but purpose over profits. I love this slide. We at Shinola, as I said earlier, have got to build a profitable company. It's critical. If we don't, we fail in our mission. Our mission is to create jobs. If we don't have a profitable, sustainable company, then we're going to fail. But our purpose is bigger than that, right? And so from an investment point of view, I don't have an investor breathing down my neck every day saying, what are you throwing to the bottom line, this this month or this quarter or this year, right? We look at those numbers and we're very conscientious of those numbers, and we want to throw up profit, but first comes our purpose, creating jobs, creating sustainable jobs, creating jobs that are meaningful to all our workers, creating high quality product, and doing it all while being authentic. So remember this as you move through your process of starting something or working for somebody. Have a purpose. And lastly, community, right? Community is everything. I can't tell you how important Detroit has been to the success of Shinola, and it's because of that community. It's because of people who care. And so as you start your ventures, again, don't just think about what you have going on within your four walls. Think about what's going on out there in the community, and how do you engage those people, and how do you get those people to be your ambassadors, right? People think we have gigantic marketing budgets. We don't. We have very healthy marketing budgets and advertising budgets, media plan, media buying budgets. We don't have giant ones. What we have are guys like me and gals like me who are out there pounding the pavement, telling the story in a very authentic way, and sharing it with the community and engaging the community, listening to the community. What does the community want? This is not all about Shinola. This is about Detroit too. This is about Silver Lake, where we have our store. It's about Bucktown, Wicker Park in Chicago, where we have a store. It's about those communities and getting engaged in those communities and letting the community help us in spreading the word. Don't forget your community. And I'll leave you with this, and I think there's one more video. When Detroit, just to tell you how much we love our city and how proud we are of our city and where we started and what has supported us. The media was calling every day after Detroit filed for bankruptcy, and we don't know shit from Shinola about bankruptcy, except you get to wipe the slate clean and start over, and it sounded great to us. But they kept hounding us and wanting to know what our thoughts were on bankruptcy, and we didn't have any. But what we did have was a brilliant tagline. And so 3 days after the city filed, we took out an ad in the New York Times, full page, full color, looked just like that with the tagline, and that watch was actually named, you saw it earlier in the presentation, It's the Birdie. And the tagline we came up with was, to those of you that have written off Detroit, we give you the birdie. And that was our response to the Detroit bankruptcy. And again, not taking ourselves too serious, having some fun with it. I'm going to leave you all with this. This is Natasha. You saw her a few minutes ago. Maybe this will encourage you guys to look at Detroit in a different way and think about it as you graduate and as you move forward.
You know what? I think that when it comes to Detroit, I view it just how I view love. Like, I feel like in everything you have like a soulmate, right? If I had to just give like one line about the city of Detroit, I would most definitely say that I belong here, and it is definitely a soulmate of mine. I was working on this poem a few days ago. It's about the city of Detroit, but it's how it breeds like greatness, great kids, great boys, great girls, how we grow up to be great men and women. And I wanted to read it to you.
Okay.
That's fine. Somewhere in the projects, there's a kid working on a project to the world. He lives in a city that grows boys and girls into lions and tigers, a city that takes the fire and the ashes, builds, rebuilds, turns abandoned houses and empty fields into things worth looking at, a place that never looks back, the center stage of a nation, the heartbeat, the patience, the music, the Motown, the Midtown, the downtown, the always come back around. We fight for our reputation, walk, ride, bike to our destination, practice patient knows that they can't forget about us. Detroit, the city that continues to call the world's bluff. Somewhere there's a kid working on a project to project from a city that's rebuilding, that we building from the ashes together so that everywhere there can be Detroit.
Beautiful. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Love you.
Thank you.